Thank you for joining the second anniversary of the Bergen County Comfort Woman Memorial.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. We said as a community is we will not tolerate this. We know it happened and never again.
I want to also recognize the Korean American Civic Empowerment for their efforts, better known as KACE. And we know that, as Kathleen had mentioned, 70 years ago, over 200,000 women across Asia and the Pacific Islands were systematically, and that's the key word, systematically kidnapped from their homes and their families. They were forced to be sex slaves for the Japanese soldiers of the Imperial Army. And the horrors that they experienced are as unspeakable, tragic, and simply wrong. What we call the comfort women issue is not a Korea versus Japan issue. It's an Asian issue. It's a woman's issue. It's a human rights issue. And it's an issue of that we in this country talk about violence against women issue. And so it is a human rights issue. And this memorial is a symbolic reminder of that such atrocities must never be repeated again, as Kathleen has said. Most importantly, the government of Japan must acknowledge and apologize unequivocally for the injustice upon the 200,000 women. There should be no more revisions in history that the Japanese government is trying to do under Prime Minister Abe. No more playing with words that the Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Abe, is trying to do, trying to redefine what coercion means or the lack of. No more revisionist history that he is trying to do. He has budgeted $500 million, $500 million from their own budget to be used to turn around our textbooks and to change our history content. And 19 historians had said, no, this is wrong. What we have is accurate and must not be tampered with. The truth is that the Imperial Army created a system of kidnapping and forcing young women and girls into sexual slavery. And the right thing to do today is to simply apologize. At the testimony in 2007 in Congress, one of the hominy, she had testified before the Foreign Relations subcommittee, and she had stated that if you cannot apologize to me, then return to me my youth. So this government apologized for those mistakes, and the government, rightfully so, must be put forward to be made to be required to face up to their own mistakes. For this reason, a government is an organic living being. It's responsible for its past, its present, and its future. And so when a government makes a mistake, they should be required to acknowledge that. And our government did in 1988 through H.R. 442, apologizing for the atrocities and the denial of the constitutional rights to Japanese Americans and other Americans. I told her there is nothing more important than for a democratic country like Japan to apologize if they want to take their rightful role as a democratic country in the global society. Reconciliation is something our generation and our culture understand. Reconciliation is something our generation should rightfully be calling for in order to promote the growth of a peaceful global society and to address the issues in the past so we can finally put them to rest. And Bergen County did just that. And I'm proud to stand in front of you in the near proximity of the monument because it is simply a symbol of a community that calls for peace and reconciliation. And let me just close with this thought that reconciliation and righting a wrong is like a wound healing. And we know, those of us who have scars on our bodies, we know that the tissue, the scar tissue that closes that wound is much stronger than the tissue around it. And so reconciliation and apology would make the Japanese government a stronger ally for those of us who believe in democracy. And they will be a more trusted government by those of us who would like to see that apology come forward for the Haumani's. And so the apology would be not for myself, not for us, but for the 200,000 women who were violated, who were killed, and who are still living today. They deserve nothing less than a rightful, unambiguous apology, and that the Japanese government accept their historical responsibility for doing that.
And let's hope that the Japanese government hears those words and listens to those words and takes action on those words. Even though these events took place more than half a century ago and half a world away, we must always remember what a tragedy this was and do everything in our powers as Americans and as human beings to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again.
Back in 2010, a monument was put up by the public library to commemorate the comfort women. Some Japanese government officials came and were very, very indignant, and of course their being indignant drew attention to the fact of what the comfort women had gone through. And so everybody came down to Palisade Park and said, we will never, never remove this monument, and that was in 2010. Hope, before the comfort women all pass away, that the government of Japan will finally recognize and perhaps pay some restitution to them. And this is very, very important for history's sake. We cannot forget.
On November 14, 2014, on the New York Times opinion page, someone wrote in, and I just want to read just a little bit of that. The U.S. has a responsibility to remind Japan, its ally, the human rights and women's rights are pillars of American foreign policy. If we do not speak out, we will be complicit not only in Japanese denials, but also in undermining today's international efforts to end war crimes involving sex violence.
Chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, myself, will be also presenting that, but we're also going to be addressing the issue of the hominy, the fact that Prime Minister Abe is coming, and we will be sharing our opinion that he should not have the ability to address the joint session of Congress. He has a right to come visit the President, the Speaker, the President of the Senate, and the Vice President, State Department, whomever, but the privilege to come before the joint session of Congress, I think, is one that I would speak up and ask our leadership not to allow that. It may be already a foregone conclusion, but we want to make public our sentiments regarding that, unless Prime Minister Abe is willing to speak to the issue of an apology and make an apology, and it will be the greatest pulpit in the world to do that. And I think that that is our position. Your part in making this thing happen. So again, to all of you, I say, kamsahamnida.